Hey, what's up? This is Chris on The Longest Way. For those of you who don't know, I've been trying to walk back from China to my home in Germany for the last several years. It's been taking a long time. Long hair, long beard now. But I don't want to talk about that right now. I want to talk about something that's been on my mind, that's been weighing on me, something bad. Which is, I personally know a guy who ended up locked up in a Chinese concentration camp in Xinjiang. And he's out now, and I never knew. I never knew that happened to him until last week. So yeah, I want to tell you about that. The reason I want to tell you about it is because I noticed that some people are, I don't know, they're just questioning the whole thing. The concentration camp system in Xinjiang, like it's not real. I had a really odd conversation with my doctor in Frankfurt last summer. She's a super nice lady. But then, like, once we were done with everything, she's like, Herr Rehage, can I ask you a question about China? You know China a little bit. I'm like, okay, I mean, sure. And then she's like, those concentration camps that you hear about in the media, are they real? Can't be, right? I was like, why not? She's like, well, you know, the media, the politicians, they like to exaggerate or even make up stuff. And I was like, no, those are real. The concentration camps are real. She's like, have you seen one? I'm like, no, of course I haven't seen one. But, you know, first of all, the Chinese government has admitted their existence. First, they said nothing is there. Then they said, well, okay, we have some camps, but they're not concentration camps. And by the way, you shouldn't think of those camps as extermination camps. They're not Auschwitz or Sobibor. No, they're not even like, I mean, the word even, but they're not like Buchenwald or Bergen-Belsen with like heaps of corpses. No, they are concentration camps. Like, people get concentrated there and they're designed to break them, re-educate them. That's what they're called, actually. The official name is 在教育营, like a re-education camp. So people are supposed to change when they're in there, and other people who are outside, they're supposed to understand that they can, you know, be put inside at any time. So that's the whole thing. Not necessarily to kill people, though bad things happen in those camps. So the Chinese government, first they didn't admit the existence, then they admitted it, and they said, well, it's 在教育营, it's a re-education camp. It's basically like a vocational school. Like, people learn skills, they dance, they learn Chinese, they sing. And then after a while, they were like, well, okay, so it's not totally voluntary because we have a terrorism problem. You got to understand, all those terrorists, we got to put them in the camps. And so when the Chinese government admits something, you can just believe it really does exist. They have those camps. They just don't call them concentration camps. They call them re-education camps. So that's the first clue. The second clue is we got satellite images, and we got witness statements, and we got investigative journalism. So like all these things together, yeah, they're real. I personally know a few people who have told me about their families and friends who have disappeared in those camps. Like, just random encounters. I met a dude in Germany, a young man, and he told me about his family. Gone. He learned about how they got into the camp through other contacts, friends and neighbors, but he hasn't had any contact with his family for years. He's just outside in Germany trying to fend for himself. Met a young Uyghur girl in Turkey, told me her dad got put into a camp. Why? Because she was studying in Turkey. He came to visit her in Turkey, and he sent her money to Turkey. So the Chinese government was like, wait, you go to Turkey, that's strike one, and then you send money to Turkey, that's strike two. And he's like, dude, it's my daughter, she's studying there, what am I supposed to do? Camp. So they put him in a camp, and that young woman, she told me all of this, and then she said, well, she hasn't had any contact with her mom for years because she's trying to protect her. These people that tell me these things, they haven't been in the camps themselves, but their families and friends have. But the thing is, I can't drag them in front of the camera and say, like, you know, identify yourself with your name and your picture, tell me the details, tell other people the details. Like my doctor in Frankfurt, no. Tell her, no. Because they want to just stay under the radar, and they don't want to make any more trouble for their families or more trouble for themselves. So what can I say? I can just say, well, I know some people, but I can't tell you who they are, right? Well, that has changed because I know this guy, and I've known him for a couple of years. And now I find out he has not only has he been in the camps, but he's also talking about it openly. And so I can tell you. So the first thing I want to do is I want to tell you how I met him, because it sheds light on what kind of person he is in the first place. In September 2016, I had just left China with my caboose, with my trailer that I pull when I walk. And I was walking through Kazakhstan. I just passed Almaty, amazing city. And I was on a little country road between villages. And on that country road, I ran into this guy, kind of maybe 10 years older than me, a little bit on the fat side, little bit. And kind of like this likable guy with a smile. So he's standing there, and he has a suitcase in his hand, and he looks like he's on his way home from work. And we start talking, but we can't talk, me and the guy, because I had never learned Kazakh. Before I went to Central Asia, I learned Russian, well, some Russian, because I figured that way I could communicate with a lot of people in Central Asia as opposed to learning all the individual Turkic languages. But he didn't know any Russian, which is really strange when you're in Kazakhstan, because most Kazakhs, or many Kazakhs, let's put it that way, they know Russian pretty well. So I try Russian with him. He tries Kazakh with me. It doesn't work. English doesn't work either. Then, after a while, we find out we both know Chinese. And it's such a happy moment. Me and that guy, we're like, yay, dude. It's kind of like we both have this emotional connection to China. And we're like super happy. We talk in Chinese and he tells me the story. So this guy, Yerbakit, he's a Kazakh, ethnic Kazakh from China, born and raised in China, lived there most of his life. And then at some point, he decided to immigrate to Kazakhstan. Like, what he told me, because I was kind of skeptical. I was like, dude, isn't much more like work and opportunity and money in China right now? Like, why would you go to Kazakhstan? He's like, yeah, I kind of get that. But he had been observing his kids, and he thought, he spoke Kazakh as a mother tongue, but he said with the present school system, they're probably not going to be very proficient in Kazakh if it stays like that. So, but he wanted them to be proficient in Kazakh. So he said, I'm just going to immigrate to Kazakhstan. He can get a passport very easily from Kazakhstan. So he took his family. First, he went by himself, set up a business, sells car parts in Kazakhstan. And then he bought a house. Then he got his family over there, his wife, his daughter, she's 5 at that point. His son is 1.5 at that point. And they live there in Kazakhstan. And for him, it was a little bit difficult, it felt to me, because he had not really been expecting the amount of Russian, I think. Because, Kazakhstan also being under, let's say, occupation, that's what it is, of the Tsar's empire and then the Soviet Union, meant that a lot of Kazakhs spoke Russian in Kazakhstan. Some Kazakhs don't even speak Kazakh at all. So this guy was there with his family, kind of a little bit frustrated with the whole Russian situation, but he was trying to make it work, and it felt all right. And we're walking and talking, and then we pass his house, and he's like, dude, my house is over here. Don't you want to come in? You can have dinner and spend the night. And I was like, really? That's awesome. So we go up to his place. It's like this big hello. His family, his wife is like, hey, and his daughter is afraid at first of this weird dude, and then she's so happy because she can speak Chinese with me, and she has been missing China so much, and it's just awesome. Little son, with a pacifier. And the mom's parents were there on a visit from China. And so like everybody was there. I show up. I remember they put they made a hot tub for me so I could take a bath. And then after the bath, we had dinner, and I played with the kids, and then I slept, and then in the morning we had breakfast, and it was awesome. And then I left, like I always do. It's kind of the traveler life, right? You spend a good time with people, and then you leave. And we left our WhatsApp contacts with each other, and we kind of kept in very, very loose contact. Like every few months or something, we would send a message. Me and this Yerbakit say like, hey, how are you doing? Oh, I'm good. How are you doing? Where are you? And I would be like, well, I'm in Uzbekistan or something like that. And that was kind of the story. I remember a few details. I remember Yerbakit and his whole family didn't seem very religious. Like there wasn't anything in terms of headscarves or the Quran anywhere, or like that he would get up to pray or something, nothing like that. And I remember when we were talking about like his social life, Yerbakit telling me that because there's this difference between Kazakhs, Russified Kazakhs, and then Chinese Kazakhs, that it was just more easy and felt more natural for him to hang out with other Chinese people in Kazakhstan, like either Kazakhs from China or Chinese from China. But that was basically his business contacts and his friends who he would hang out with. So that was kind of like the guy. And like I said, I left. We kept in contact, and then I just looked at the log of our WhatsApp, and I noticed between March 2017 and summer 2020, we didn't have any contact. I don't know why. Like, maybe it was just that loose, kind of, right? So like for almost 3 years or more than 3 years, we didn't have any contact. And then in summer 2020, I sent him a message, and I'm like, hey, Erbakit, how you doing? And the message I get back from him is a little bit weird because he writes in formal Chinese. He writes, 你好,你是谁? Like a very polite way to ask a total stranger who they are. And I'm like, dude, it's me, Chris. I stayed at your place. And he's like, oh, it's you. Oh, and right. Everything is good. We're good. How are you doing? Where are you? And I'm like, yeah, I don't know where I was there. And that was our way of staying in contact. And we stayed in contact ever since, just, like sometimes not for a year, but then we would send some messages and I would inquire and he would inquire. And that went on until last month. Last month, Kazakhstan had riots, right? You must have noticed. Kazakhstan, just like China, is a dictatorship and it can get very brutal sometimes. So these protests that started out as normal protests, they turned violent. It's still very intransparent. It's hard to understand what went down, but it turned bloody in the cities, not in the countryside, apparently. And so during the riots, I got worried about my friends in Kazakhstan. I sent some messages to some friends in the cities and I was like, are you okay? Is your family okay? And they sent me back after a few days because there was no internet for a few days. They were like, yeah, it's all right, but it's, it is what it is. And one girl, I remember she told me she saw corpses in the streets and she really wants to leave the country because she feels like there's no hope. So that was Kazakhstan. But all this time, I didn't think of Erbakit because I thought he's in the countryside. He's in the village, right? That's where the house is. And that's so far from all of these things. I don't have to worry. But then Chinese New Year last week was around the corner. So I was like, I'm going to send him a message anyway. Like we send messages sometimes, once a year or whatever. And I sent him a message. I'm like, hey, how you guys doing? With the riots and everything. But I guess in the village, it must be quiet. And he's like, yeah, it's right. It's quiet. No problem. And I was like, well, for the new year, you probably don't celebrate it. But anyway, Happy New Year. He's like, yeah, you're right. We don't celebrate. But thanks for thinking of us. And are you good? And I'm like, yeah, I'm good. And then for some reason, I followed this intuition. And I'm like, dude, Erbakit, one question. Your family or friends have not been impacted by these so-called 在教育营, these re-education camps in Xinjiang, right? And I expect him to say no. Or say like, yeah, I know some guy or whatever. But no, he sends me a message back and it's a GIF or a GIF of the woman holding her cup and drinking, but laughing out loud. So like she squirts the water or the tea or whatever. So it's like an LOL GIF. And then under that, the next message is, yeah, me. And I'm like, what? Excuse me? You have been impacted by these camps? How? Because it doesn't make sense from the timeline. I met him in September 2016 when he was already in Kazakhstan with his family. So like, how could he be in those camps if those camps started going into operation late 2016, early 2017? How's that possible? I'm like, dude, I thought you guys were lucky you got out before. And he's like, yeah. He went back to see his parents. They're elderly. So he went back to see them in the spring of 2017. And that's when they got him. They got him in May 2017. And like it started with just some messages he should show up here or show up there to get registered or something. And then they took him and they put him in prison. And he stayed in shackles, in 7-kilo shackles for 90 days or something. And then they put him in a camp and they moved him between different camps all the time. And there was violence, there were beatings between inmates and by the guards. So much so that he ended up in a hospital. And that went on for almost 2 years. They let him out in March 2019, if I'm not mistaken. They let him out. They told him, well, we've evaluated your case. It's okay. So after 2 years, they found out he is not an extremist or anything. They had locked him up because of two things. The first thing is having WhatsApp on his phone, to which he was like, dude, what am I supposed to do in Kazakhstan? Like, people use WhatsApp in Kazakhstan or Telegram or something. I'm not supposed to use it? I'm like, well, it's illegal. And the second reason, he had apparently had some sort of religious video on his phone. Well, this is not a very religious guy. And so they did all of that to him. And then he came out. They drove him to the border and kicked him out of the country because he still had his Kazakh passport. And that was it. And then he went back home and he just showed up out of nowhere at his home, at that place where I had stayed and taken a bath and played with the kids and had dinner and breakfast and all of that. He showed up there. And everybody cried at the sight of this dad that had just showed up. And he said his son didn't recognize him because his son, when he went in without anything like a notice, was 2. And then when he came back, he was 4. And so the son didn't have any recollection of his dad. And that's how he got back. And then my friend Yerbakit at home decided that all of this was really bad and a bad experience, but you got to carry on. So he tried to carry on for a while with his scars and everything. But then he decided, no. No. And he got in touch with the Uyghur Congress and he flew to London to testify. They made a court. It's not a legal court. It doesn't have any jurisdiction or anything, but at least they're trying to shed a light on these things that are going on. And so he went there and he testified and he showed his scars and he told them about what happened. And he appeared in some media because he said, this is not right. What happened to me? I shouldn't be quiet. And so he decided with his real name, with his face and everything, to be there out in the open. And he sent me the video, or one of the videos. He sent me some pictures from the Congress and he sent me the video that the BBC made where he is in black and white in his room and he shows his scars and the places where they hurt him. And he talks about it in Kazakh.
Kol ayakta көзір бар. Осыны жұдырық салып, соны ұрып, қалдырып, сол көзді. Сүйреп, даурған мені қайтесің? Ұрып өлтіріп саса, жақсы ет деп ойлайсың кейде.
And then this thing happened while I was watching the video that shocked me about myself because I understood that I recognized the video, having watched it before, but I didn't recognize my friend. Of course I'd watched the video. I'm interested. I try to keep up to date with whatever is happening in China, especially these things, human rights situations. And so I had watched the video before, but that guy in the video in black and white, speaking in Kazakh about himself being victimized, I didn't recognize him the first time I watched it. I didn't know that was my friend. And why is that? I'm thinking, okay, so the video is black and white. And okay, the guy is speaking Kazakh, not Chinese. But then, isn't it? I mean, it's really obvious. Once you look at the video, you're like, of course it's the guy. I think, and I'm just kind of trying to understand what's happening. I think what happened, or what might have happened, is that when I watch stuff like that, victims testifying about something, and it could be anything, could be concentration camps in Xinjiang, could be a war zone, could be a natural disaster, anything, or a car wreck or something. In that moment, there is a distance between me and them. That I make, that distance, is that they are in that moment personified victims. It's like their whole identity is just they are this victim. And so I watch it and I empathize, but I don't empathize on this level that I might know them. I empathize because they are victims. And so I was watching this thing and there was this distance between me and this guy because he was only this victim who got beaten and shackled and all of these things happened to him in this concentration camp. For nothing. And I was not, the category of him being a person, or possibly being a person that I knew, just wasn't there. I wasn't expecting it, so to say. And so I didn't recognize him. Yeah, and so now I watched it again and I was like, shit, that's you, man. That's you. Yeah. That guy in the video, talking about the shackles, showing his scars, that's my Erbakit. That's the guy where I bathed, where I had dinner, where I played with the kids, where I had breakfast. That's the guy for nothing. Not a religious guy, not a guy who doesn't like China or anything. Just a guy who wanted his kids to have a Kazakh language education. That's it. Yeah. He told me his son, like his family is good again. He wants to get asylum in England or in Germany, somewhere. He doesn't feel like it's completely safe in Kazakhstan either, because Kazakhstan, again, is a dictatorship and they're pretty close with China. But he's working on it. And especially with his son, it's good again. His son has a dad now. And sometimes when we talk, it feels like he's trying to comfort me, which is odd. But we talk and he sends me these messages and he's like, dude, don't worry. It's fine now. I'm lucky. I got out. I got out alive. Others didn't. It's fine. Don't worry. Yeah. So this is the story of my friend Erbakit, who ended up in one of those camps for nothing, and who is scarred, and who came out. Something you should know. Good luck to Erbakit, to his family, and to all the other victims. Peace.